in this we'll be discussing Aqidah related to Almighty Allah. We have various Aqaid that we need to learn about the divine, then also about the prophethood, or the prophets of Islam, especially Salam and Sahaba Kiram, the Khulafa Rashideen, and then some Aqaid regarding the Day of Judgment, and also Ahl Bayt Kiram, Aimma Kiram. So, the time that we are living in, there are many confusions regarding Aqaid. A lot of you, the youngsters especially, they come across in the schools and social media, electronic media, we come across the challenge of atheism. And a lot of ulama nowadays, unfortunately, they're not aware of the Aqaid, let alone the public. The alim who was meant to deliver this to the people, in this alim who was required to teach to the people, he doesn't know what Aqaid are and how to present them. So it's not a public's fault, it's the fault of the teachers maybe, and publics to a certain extent, because they haven't made any effort to learn it. So it's very important to learn Aqaid related to Almighty Allah. And so this is a part of your belief. So belief is the foundational thing. So without belief, your actions are not accepted. So if you have wrong belief, for example, if you end up sitting in a company of people who have wrong sets of beliefs, and you end up believing in the wrong Aqidah, for example, then you have destroyed your Iman, essentially. If Iman is not there, then all of your action, all of your amal will not be accepted. Now without belief, actions are not accepted. So it's very important for you to have your beliefs right. And as Muslims, mashallah, as Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, people of Ahlus Sunnah, you should be able to portray and present your beliefs. For example, you will go to universities now, some of you, and colleges, and you will see people from other sects for being proactive in preaching their beliefs and imposing them onto you, the wrong beliefs. If you don't know them at this point, it's very likely that you will fall prey to them. So you have to learn that and make sure that you are fully aware of that. So it's important that you take notes as well. If you can use your phones for the day. If not, then bring a shot next time. So very first belief we're learning about is about Almighty Allah. And when we say that He has no partners, that means that neither in His divine being and neither in His divine attributes. Attributes are the sifat. For example, I'm speaking. Speaking is a sifat of mine. Or I can listen. Allah Ta'ala created that power in me. Listening is a sifat of mine. So sam'a or basar is called in Arabic. Sama'at, ability to listen. And basarat, the ability to see the vision, that's a quality or attribute of yours. So Allah Ta'ala, Bari Ta'ala has the attributes, and all of the attributes of Almighty Allah, no one can be shareek of Almighty Allah in any of those. Meaning no one can be a partner with Almighty Allah in any of the attributes, whether it's sama'at or basarat, quwwat, qudrat, irada, and many of them which we will count inshallah in a bit. So all of these are sifat of Almighty Allah. Kalam, no one can be equal to Him in that level, in that sifat. So neither in His names, neither in His af'al, His actions, the actions that He does, whatever He does, He is alone in that. No one can be a partner in that. In ahkam, the commandments that He does, that is commandments from Him. So we have to believe in that, because we know that commandments, all the ahkam of Sharia, they came from Almighty Allah. And when they came from the Aqaid of Salam in shape of hadith, even that's from Almighty Allah, because hadith and all of the Quran is also the wahi of Almighty Allah. So Aqaid hasn't said anything from his own. Everything that he said was the wahi and revelation of Almighty Allah. So therefore he has no partners in all of these things. Next important aqidah that you need to learn is about this wajibul wujud. Wajibul wujud, that's a very heavy term that we use in our Islamic philosophy and also Islamic discussions, aqidah. Wajibul wujud means that his wujud is necessary to exist. He has to exist. necessary. So even wajibul wujud means that somebody who is wajib, his wujud is wajib. If he did not exist for one moment, then a great muhal would occur. And something that is impossible, that would occur. So that cannot occur naturally. So something that is ultimately impossible to happen, that can't happen. So that means his wujud has to be there. For the universe to exist, for the everything to be there, his wujud is wajib. So when you have this concept in your mind, that he is wajibul wujud, then leave all the discussions of atheism behind, because they are discussing whether he is present or not. We say that he has to exist. Without him there can be no existence, subhanAllah. So he is wajibul wujud. So that means his existence is necessary and his non-existence is muhal or impossible. So that's another aqidah, that he is wajibul wujud. See, that's why I was saying that's very important to write down. Now you must be struggling to remember these terms. So first, that he is free from all the partners in the sifat. Second, he is wajibul wujud. Third, he is qadeem. That's another scary term. He is qadeem. Meaning he is pre-existing. Qadeem, you can understand that in an easy way, that qadeem is something that you cannot associate a beginning to. Meaning when you cannot determine a starting point of somebody, that is qadeem. So only Almighty Allah is qadeem, nothing else is qadeem. Meaning only He is qadeem, everything else has a beginning point. Me and you, we all have a starting point and also an expiry date. So therefore, we are not qadeem, we are hadith. Hadith is the creation. And qadeem is the creator. Only he is the qadeem. He's the qadeem. Only he is pre-existing. That he existed before everything else. He existed before everything else. For that reason, he is pre-existing, and he is qadeem. So this is our fundamental aqaid that we need to learn. Qadeem also means that he has been there, always been there, and also that he will always be there as well. He has always existed and he will always be there. And one of his name is also Azali, yani he always was there. Azali, Azal. I mean, you can't determine a beginning point, he was always there. And also Abadi, Abadi means that he is everlasting. And only he is the worthy of being worshipped. Because of that, because he is qadeem and he is azali and he is abadi, that he always existed and he is everlasting as well and will always remain. Therefore, he is the only worthy of the worship. No other prophet, no other angel, no other creation of Almighty Allah has this quality. Only he has this quality. So we have to believe in that, because sometimes you might come across some philosophers and hukama in Islam who claim to be Muslims, but they call certain bodies as qadeem. For example, they call the aflaq, the heavens, as qadeem. Some of the stars, they consider them as qadeem. But we believe that only Allah Ta'ala is qadeem and everything else is created by Him. Okay? Second belief we need to have is that He is free from need. Free from need and free from any care that he needs to take. He's completely independent, does not depend on anybody, and does not need anybody else for anything. So neither dependent on anyone, nor he's dependent on anything. So everything else that he created, obviously, needs him. So nothing else can remain without him. So he is wajibul wujud, and everything else is either mumkin or ma'dum. You will learn this if you ever reach the final stages of Dars al-Nizami. You will learn philosophy, inshallah ta'ala, and you will learn that there are three in the whole universe. Either you will have something as wajib, or you will have a mumkin or a ma'dum. Something that's wajib has to exist, that's necessary to exist, or something that is existing and is mumkin, possible for that thing to exist, and something that's ma'dum, that's non-existent. Other than these three elements, there is nothing else. So Allah Ta'ala is wajibul wujud, and everything else that He created besides Him, that is mumkin, and that something that has not been created is ma'doom. So ma'doom can include things like other gods. They cannot be no other gods. So that's ma'doom, and impossible to be created, because Allah says if there is one more god or more than one god in the universe, then there will be mischief and disorder in the universe. So Allah Ta'ala is the only worthy of worship for that reason. He is free from every other need, and he is everything else is dependent on him. And we need to understand our inability, and must accept that we are completely incapable of understanding Almighty Allah. When you start the discussion of Almighty Allah, the question might arise in mind, and you might start comparing him to things which you have seen. Especially the youngsters who are sitting here, and all of you too. So when we start talking about Sifat of Almighty Allah, when we start talking about the existence of Almighty Allah, questions arise in mind that how is it possible? And you start comparing that to things that you have knowledge of. But we need to understand that our intellect is limited. And we must understand that he is unlimited. He has no limits. And when he has no limits and your intellect is very tiny and limited, you can never comprehend Almighty Allah. You have to accept this before stepping into the knowledge of the Sifat of Almighty Allah. You have to first accept and realize and confess that we are completely unable to understand it. When we will approach the Sifat of Almighty and Aqaid of Almighty in this way, and he will help us inshallah in understanding. So we have to believe, understand that comprehending Almighty Allah, because he is divine being, and comprehending him completely by means of reason and intellect is absolutely impossible. Because something that can be understood by the means of reason or our intellect, that will be encompassed by the mind. Meaning that will be limited or encompassed by our intellect at least. But Allah Ta'ala cannot be encompassed. He is unlimited. For that reason, he cannot be understood. So therefore, all those people who in the past have tried to understand him by the intellect and wisdom and argument and thinking deeply about his existence, they were all lost. That's why Aqal has prohibited us from discussing too much about the existence of Almighty Allah. Know that Islam cannot prove his existence. Alhamdulillah, scholars have proven throughout the history, and every single creation itself is a sign of the existence of Almighty Allah. But still, we are required to believe and submit our intellect in front of Almighty Allah. And whenever we will be arrogant and start discussing the existence of Almighty Allah, then it's very likely that we will be lost, because we cannot encompass the ultimate existence of Almighty Allah. So, well, other than that, the Sifat of Almighty Allah, the Sifat and attributes that we are allowed to discuss and seek the knowledge of, because they become the reason for us to understand Almighty Allah. The Sifat, the attributes of Almighty Allah, the Kalam of Almighty Allah, the Quran, the other Sifat like his Rahmat, his Ghadab, all of these Sifat, they exist so that we can understand Almighty Allah in a better way. So we need to take and acquire knowledge of that. Another belief that we need to adopt is that when we talk about his Sifat, for example, we have Sifat. I'm speaking now. Speaking is one of my Sifat. So it's something that's associated to me. But when we say that Allah Ta'ala's Sifat is this, so Allah Ta'ala's Kalam, for example, take his Kalam, his vision, his hearing, and all the rest of the Sifat, his Ghadab, Iqab, all of the Sifat. We say that these are Sifat neither Ain of Almighty Allah, neither Ghair of Almighty Allah. That's very important Aqeedah to understand, that they are neither synonymous with his divine being, neither they are separate from him. See? Take a moment to let that sink in. His Sifat are neither exactly the same as him. You can't, for example, take Quran. Quran is Sifat of Almighty Allah, it's Kalam of Almighty Allah. But you can't say that Quran is Allah. You can't say that. So it's not exactly Allah, But you can't say that this is separate from Almighty Allah. It is sifat of Almighty Allah. I hope you understood. So all the rest of sifat, for example, his sama'at, we consider his sama'at is Allah, his divine being. But his sama'at and other sifat are associated, linked with him. So they're not detached from him, and they're not exactly him. So they are sifat, they're all qadim sifat, however, they are not separate from Almighty Allah. So you can't say that they're separate entities. They are dependent, or you can say they are subordinate to the Almighty Allah. So neither they're synonymous with the divine being, neither they're separate. So it's important to understand. So meaning that they cannot be separated away from his divine being, because they are essential elements, of his divine being, and they have no existence separate from him. So meaning that they neither existed before him, neither did they exist after him. So these are sifat which always existed with his divine being, but they are not separate as well. So it's something that we need to take a moment to understand, inshallah ta'ala. So that's why I said it's important to write these down. So for that reason, I would like to repeat these inshallah next week, so that we can understand this better when we have your notebooks involved, so you can note them down, inshallah ta'ala. So as we mentioned already, the sifat are also qadim. This being is qadim. His sifat are also qadim. That's simple to understand. We mentioned this. And one thing we need to understand is that the sifat of Almighty Allah are not his makhluq. Very important aqidah. Many people, they digressed from the reality, having a wrong aqidah about it. And many highly eminent scholars, they stumbled on this. So it's very important to learn that sifat of Almighty Allah are not makhluq of Almighty Allah. They were not created by Almighty Allah. For example, take Quran. Many great scholars, they were punished. And Hazrat Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, he denied to accept that Quran is makhluk of Almighty Allah. And Mu'tasim Billah Ghalban was the king of the time. He punished him with flogging, and he died because of that eventually. He was killed because of this, but he did not accept that the Quran is makhluk of Almighty Allah. There was a great fitan therefore at that time from Mu'tazileen. Mu'tazila was a group of people, like we have many sects nowadays. Mu'tazila was a sect in the past. They had many wrong beliefs. They developed many wrong beliefs, and they were imposing. And some of the kings of the time, they joined in with them, so they were imposing that on the people. So one of that belief was the Quran being the makhluk of Almighty Allah. So they were trying to impose on the people that. But we need to understand that Quran is not makhluk. That's the belief of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'at. All of them are kind of unanimous on this, that Quran is not makhluk, and it is also all this, not the Quran, all the rest of the sifat as well. Every sifat of Almighty Allah is not makhluk. They are therefore not creation of Almighty Allah. And this might be difficult to understand, that nor are they included as being under his divine control. Makhluk. I mean, while he has ultimate control over himself as well, and also all the rest of the creations, the sifat, that means the sifat of Almighty Allah, they are like qadim, just like himself. So therefore his sifat are only his sifat, and so they cannot be created in someone else now. I mean, these sifat, if they were under his control and maqdur, then that would mean that he could create the same sifat in somebody else. Then people might start considering that individual as a God as well, and worthy of worship. So because his sifat are impossible, take it like this, his sifat, just like his divine being is impossible to be created, just similarly his sifat are impossible to be created. They are divine and they are pre-existing and no hadiths, so therefore they cannot be created. So they are not under the qudrat of creation that he has. For that reason. See how deep aqaid we need to understand. How many of you knew some of these aqaid? Raise your hands. None of them. Because these are very important aqaid, but most of us are totally unaware of that. So, another thing is that just izzat and sifat, only these two things are qadim. For us to believe in the qidam or pre-existence of something, we need to understand that only two things are pre-existing. One is Zat of Almighty Allah and one is Sifat of Almighty Allah. So other than that, everything else is makhluk of Almighty Allah. Only the Zat, the divine being of Almighty Allah and divine attributes of Almighty Allah. Everything else is the makhluk and creation of Almighty Allah, and everything else is under His control. And also hadith. Hadith means that they were created and they were inexistent originally, but Allah Ta'ala brought them into existence. So that's the meaning of hadith. So somebody who believes that any of the sifat of Almighty Allah is hadith or makhluk, then he's gumrah, means he's a digressed and misguided and a corrupt individual. So we need to have this basic belief that sifat of Almighty Allah cannot be created, they cannot be hadith. That's important again. So Allah Ta'ala neither is He father to anyone, nor is He son to anyone, or nor does He has any wife for anyone who claims that Allah is his father or son of anyone. All that's wrong, it becomes a disbeliever. Somebody who associates a son or any of the wife or a child with Almighty Allah, or a father who calls Almighty Allah father of somebody, then that person becomes disbeliever. Okay? And also, if someone has the slightest of the doubt in the mind, I mean, some people, most of believers would not obviously associate son with Almighty Allah, but sometimes, because of living in a society where sometimes you come across individuals who are kuffar and they associate son with Almighty Allah, they call Isa as the son of God. So sometimes the young minds might develop a doubt in the mind. It's important to learn that even if you have slightest of the doubt in the mind that Allah Ta'ala can have a son, even that will take one out of the ambit of Islam. So he's a misguided person, somebody who has slightly of the doubts in the possibility of Allah Ta'ala having a son. So that person will be misguided. So he needs to repent straight away and make sure he adopts the right Aqidah. And when we say he is Hayy is one of the sifat of Almighty Allah. We mentioned that we can discuss some of the sifat of Almighty Allah. Hayy means that he is alive. Allah is self-existing or alive out of his own accord. Okay? Nobody else has any role to play in his existence. He is alive and he is existing, Hayy, because of his own power. His own power makes it possible for him to exist, and the life of everything else depends on him. Everything else, every other living thing, apart from himself and his sifat, every other thing, the life of those things depends on his qudrat, his divine control. So he has the ability to give life to things, even the things which are dead, he can bring them back to life. Things which are living, he can make them die anytime whenever he wishes. And also that he has qudrat over every single mumkin, every single possible thing that can happen that is not muhal, aqlan or shar'an. Anything that's not muhal, not impossible, he has ultimate ability to do that thing. Meaning he has qudrat over every single mumkin, and no possible thing is out of his qudrat. Meaning he is qadir, has divine power over every mumkin, and no mumkin is out of his power. And everything that's muhal now, muhal means absolutely impossible. Okay? Absolutely impossible. So the youngster sitting behind me, still concentrating here? Okay. So muhal means absolutely impossible. So anything that's impossible cannot be connected to his qudrat. So we can't say that he is now qadir over that. But we see that this thing is such a thing that Allah Ta'ala's qudrat is much above. He is much above this thing. So his qudrat is much, can say, sacred, much higher than having the qudrat. For example, he has no qudrat over all the bad things that we can think of. Some people in the recent past, they thought that Allah Ta'ala can lie, na'uzubillah. And they claim themselves to be believers and Ahlus Sunnah as well. From the Deobandi sects, they thought that Allah Ta'ala can lie. Khuda jhoot bol sakta hai. When you believe Allah Ta'ala can lie, then everything, all the building of Islam doesn't fall down. I mean, you think that Allah Ta'ala can lie, that there's a possibility of him lying, and everything that he said in Quran, you might have a doubt that this might be lying, na'uzubillah. Some of this might be lying, na'uzubillah. So it's very, very harmful belief. So anything that has any shortcoming cannot be associated with Almighty Allah. So any shortcoming, anything that has slightness of the shortcomings, Allah Ta'ala qudrat is much above that to include that. यानी Allah Ta'ala qudrat उससे बहुत ऊंची है कि वो उस जिसमें थोड़ा नक्स है, shortcoming है, उसको शामिल हो, उसको include करे. Therefore we say that Allah Ta'ala, we don't say that He is not qadir over that, but we say that His qudrat is much above, His zat is much above this, that He includes that thing which has a shortcoming in it. So therefore He is much beyond. So it's not a shortcoming for Him. When we say that He can't do this, for example, He can't lie, doesn't mean that He has a shortcoming. It means that thing is not worthy of being done by Allah. That thing, for example, that bad thing which has a shortcoming in it, a naqs or a sin, is not worthy of being done or associated with Almighty Allah. He is much above and much sacred. And also, for example, take the example of creating another God. We say that He cannot create another God, because if He creates another God, then there will be another worthy of worship, and Allah says there will be disorder in the universe because of that. But sometimes people might raise the question that He has no ability, His qudrat is limited, therefore, because He can't create a God. So this means that it's muhal and impossible to create Almighty Allah. But reality is that it is, if He creates another God, then that means He will not be God Himself. And if somebody else becomes of the same level and same authority and same power, then his you can say divine position will be lost. So therefore, it's literally impossible and technically impossible for Almighty Allah to create that impossible and another God. Similarly, non-existence of Almighty Allah is muhal as well. So if that was under the power of Almighty Allah, then that would be mumkin. But something that is impossible cannot be in the qudrat of Almighty Allah, because that is literally and technically impossible. So therefore muhal. So somebody who has any belief in that, it's important just to sum it up. Somebody who believes that muhal, things that are impossible, for example, creation of another God, or non-existence of Almighty Allah, or associating a shortcoming with Almighty Allah, these are muhalat, impossible things. And if you believe that any impossible thing can be linked with Almighty Allah, can be associated with Almighty Allah, then that is kufr. Somebody who believes that any impossible thing can be associated with Almighty Allah, and he has put it over that, then that will become a kufr. This is from the fundamental aqaid that we have to have a belief that Allah Ta'ala is free from all those impossible things which cannot take place. Okay? I'm not going fast because these aqaid are very complex and need some time to understand. Also, this is Aqidah number 14 now that we're learning. How many more do you want today? Inshallah, we'll keep it to that. One last Aqidah. because I know it's tough to understand it completely, but I will let you bring your notebook next time so that you can write it down as well. Otherwise, it will be lost. You will walk away and most of you won't remember what I just said. So it's very important that you write it down. And one thing that every maqdur, everything that we believe is possible to be created, does not necessarily exist already. Yani we say that something is under the qudrat of Almighty Allah, but that doesn't mean that it also exists. It might exist in the future, it may never be created, but that can be created. So because that is possible. And also, meaning that everything that does not exist doesn't mean that he has no ability to create that. That's another very important aqidah. The thing that does not exist, that doesn't mean that he has no ability to create that. And things that do not, that are possible to be created, does not necessarily have to exist. When Allah Ta'ala wishes and He desires, He will create whatever He wants. Okay? Any question you might have from all of these things that we mentioned, feel free to ask me any question. Even the youngsters can ask questions. I would like to have some questions from you, so that should test your understanding, whether you understand. Or I will ask questions.
Just sum up you could can
So we learned about one thing, that Allah Ta'ala is divine being. And when we say Allah is divine being, that we have certain attributes and sifat that we need to believe in, so that we have a clarification, clear understanding of His existence. So therefore it's very important to learn all of this. So first thing is that He is one. He has no partner, and no one can be partner in His being and all of His actions, His sifat, His names, and His existence as necessary, meaning that He is wajib al-wujud, and His non-existence would be impossible and muhal. And that everything depends on Him. He is non-dependent, He does not depend on anything. And also that when we cannot understand some of His attributes or His existence, that only means that our intellect is limited. When you can't understand when you can't get over the discussion of existence of Almighty Allah, that means that your intellect and your wisdom is limited. You can't comprehend something that's unlimited. You have a limited intellect, so therefore He is unlimited. You can't encompass the existence of Almighty Allah. So therefore you can never understand that. And also that all of His sifat are also pre-existence, and they were not created. We have to believe in that. In sifat like kalam of Almighty Allah, Quran and other sifat, they were not created. They are sifat of Almighty Allah. And everything else was created. And whoever considers that the sifat were created by Almighty Allah, or they were hadith, they were not pre-existing, then that means that person is misled and misguided. And that he has no God, no father, no son. He can't be father to anybody, he can't be son to anybody. Those who believe in that, they are misguided, and kuffar is a kufr. And he's alive on his own, nobody created him, and his being alive is also one of the sifat now, his attribute. So that is also qadim, so his existence has always been, and he will be everlasting, eternal, and therefore there is no hudus in that. He will always be. And everything that is possible, everything that's possible is under the qudrat of Almighty Allah. And things which are not under the qudrat, they are muhal, are impossible. For example, he cannot create another God. That means his another God, existence of another God is completely impossible. That's why he cannot create. So it's not a shortcoming therefore of his qudrat, but a shortcoming for that thing, because it's not worthy of being associated with the qudrat of Allah. Any questions? I'm still waiting for questions from the youngsters.
सर जो सिम्त तयन करते हैं अल्लाह ऊपर है इधर है
वो आगे आएगा,
वो आगे
आगे आएगा।
ठीक है। तो इसमें एक और क्वेश्चन है कि मदद करना, जो यहाँ पे अल्लाह की सिफात में से है, तो ये भी बहुत मतलब एतराज़ करते हैं जी, वो ये तो खालिस अल्लाह की सिफत है, तो ये आप बंदों में तलाश करते हैं तो ये शिरक है।
ठीक है, वो सारे आगे आएंगे तफसील से मसाइल।
चलें।
मतलब पहले भी सरकार की तफसील से आगे आ रहे हैं। अभी चूंकि बुनियादी
ऊपर वाला भी कहते हैं इस तरह
वो भी वो सिम्त की बात की मैंने। तो सिम्त के ताकि इंशाल्लाह we will learn about direction, associated direction and space. And I think we will learn later, maybe next lesson. That he is free from space. Makan, he can't be. As we learn, he is unlimited. Any space, any makan, any place will have certain limits. But he is unlimited, so he cannot be encompassed. Right, the makan. So we will learn this later, inshallah.
फरमाया कि अल्लाह ताला की ज़ात वही है, आप चीज़ का कादर है, मौत देनी जिंदगी सारी उधर कंट्रोल दे विच है, लेकिन he can pass the power to prophets which they can I mean वो फिर इस तरीके का जरा हज़रत ईसा अलैहिस्सलाम जान जड़े दोबारा पैदा कर सके वो अशिया ने हज़रत ईसा अलैहिस्सलाम के हिसाब से पता नहीं चलता अशिया दे obviously he only has the power उसके बीच का थोड़ा
ओके आएगा ना तफसील का इंशाल्लाह। थोड़े क्वेश्चन बड़े अच्छे हैं, very valid questions, but these are all inshallah covered. These are all covered in next few lessons. So I'm not going to that level. जितना मैंने cover किया था ना, इसके बारे में question को है तो ask
कदीम और हादिस जो है इसके बारे में थोड़ा सा
Qadim. You want some more explanation? So Qadim in simple terms is Qadim is something that is not created. And hadith is something that's created. यानी hadith वो होता है Daniel, you pay attention. What did I say? Qadim. Qadim means pre-existing, something that's not created. And hadith is something that's created. So that's the difference. When Allah Ta'ala is Qadim, that means He was not created. And everything else is hadith because He created everything else.
What is the Quran in that?
Quran is a sifat of Allah, it's Qadim. Yeah, it's not hadith.
So I've heard so when people say, or when it's said that Allah said write to the pen and the pen wrote the Quran, is that correct?
No, that's true, but that means the words were written. So words, very good question, it's coming later as well. So words that we see, the words are creation of Allah, but the kalam of Allah is not creation. The words, the actual original words that He uttered, they are, usually you learn in detail, everything can't be covered in one lesson. No, they are not like our words. I speak with words now, and they are listening. There's a sound as well, there's waves of sound coming to you. Allah Ta'ala's kalam is free from that. His kalam is free from words, free from sound, free from, you can say, all of these things that we have. His kalam is that. What you see on the book is words, and when it's recited, you see the sound as well. That's different. That's creation. So the words that you see in the Quran, written with ink, that's all creation of Allah. The words are creation. But whatever is the kalam of original kalam of Allah, that's not the meanings that they are linked to. They are not. You can say the creation of Allah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that is, yeah.
Good question. That was a good question. Moji, छोटे हो question नहीं? Now let me just. I want to see whether you understood or not. Whether that was too complex. समझ आई? What I just said about Quran being not the creation of Almighty Allah, Allah Ta'ala being pre-existing, He always existed. You understood that? Yeah? Shaban, you tell me.
Yeah, understood it.
That's all right. Next time you will deliver lessons. Anybody else? Any questions?
Can you go over the bit where you said that Allah Almighty cannot be associated with anything bad?
Yeah. So some people, that's very important to learn, because some people in the recent past, they claim to be a very, great group, sect within Muslims, and they often associate shirk with Sunnis, blame us of being bid'ati. But they themselves have recently mentioned in their fatwa that Allah Ta'ala can, na'uzubillah, have the ability, he can lie, na'uzubillah. We can associate kirb He has the ability to lie with Almighty Allah. So Allah Hazrat took, a stance on it, and he delivered a great fatwa on that in Fatawa al-Sharif. And this is also related to that. So any shortcoming, anything that has can be any shortcoming of sin, Allah Ta'ala's qudrat is free from that. When we say that He cannot do so, it's not a shortcoming or naqs for Almighty Allah. And when you say that He can't lie, then you are technically saying that He can't do one thing. Allah Ta'ala He can't do everything. But there's one thing that He can't do, and that's lying. Somebody might come up with that argument. When we say that this thing cannot be associated because it's not worthy of being in His qudrat. So therefore, sins and bad things are not worthy of being in the qudrat of Allah. So it's not a shortcoming of Allah. Good question. One more question.
Come on, boys. One more, then we're going. Otherwise, we're going to stay here all night. Yeah. जो कुछ समझ आई है वो बता सकते हैं।
Expand on what is muhal. Expand on what it means by muhal.
Good. So muhal means impossible. That's a literal meaning. But muhal has a deeper discussion and deeper understanding. So it comes with it comes against mumkin. Everything that's mumkin, that means that's under the qudrat of Almighty Allah. That can be done. And that something that is not under the qudrat and it's impossible to exist, that's muhal. For example, to understand, when we say that there is only one worthy of worship and only one controller of the divine universe, or the universe, one divine controller of the universe, believing that there can be another God, that would be wrong. So because existence of another God is muhal. Allah says no other God can exist beside Almighty Allah. Only He is the ilah, and لو كان فيهما آلهة إلا الله لفسدتا. If there were more than one God except Almighty Allah, then there would be mischief and disorder in the universe. So that thing that leads to disorder, or thing which is impossible to exist, that is muhal. So muhal is a term. It's important to learn these terms as well. For example, mumkin, wajib, ma'doom, muhal. These terms they are linked to our aqidah. It's important to be able to understand them and memorize them. So they were good questions. I like those. But next time you will have notebooks as well, and you will have better questions. Even better. They were good questions.